excited about you being on. Welcome to Now Faith is TV.
Thank you, Dr. Paulette. I am so honored to be here.
Hello, and welcome everyone to another episode of Now Faith is TV, where faith, books, and business collide. I am your host, Dr. Paulette Harper, award-winning author and self-publishing coach, where I unlock the power of storytelling for coaches, speakers, entrepreneurs who are ready to write a nonfiction book that establishes them as expert in their niche. I'm so excited about bringing you another fantastic episode. We are going to talk to author Jennifer Jackson. I'll give you a little bit of information about her, and she's going to share a little bit more about who she is. Jennifer Jackson is an author of If It Didn't Break Me, her personal struggle with depression. And then also she is the co-author with an amazing best-selling book, Women with Unshakable Faith. And Jennifer, I am so excited about talking with you today about destroying the bondage of secrets. Welcome to Now Faith is TV. Tell the audience a little bit about who you are, and then we're just going to go right on into this amazing episode.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Jackson. I am a recently retired U.S. Army military veteran with over 26 years of military service. And I became an author in 2018 whenever I was a collaboration for another book where I talked about in a chapter about my depression. And then from there, I took a sermon and I wrote a book about it because that's what the Lord told me to do. And then after that, I got the opportunity to be a part of Dr. Paulette's collaboration. And to say that it's amazing, it is. I am also an advocate on the military side, and I'm also for people who have dealt with sexual harassment, sexual assault, but I'm also an advocate for children who are in the foster care system here in the state of Louisiana currently.
Well, awesome. Well, first of all, before we get into the interview, thank you so much for your service as a retired military in the United States Army. Thank you so much for that. And so as an advocate, you shared with us that you're an advocate for those who have been dealing with or in the process of dealing with sexual things that are pertaining to, sexuality, and so you have you did your chapter in the anthology talking about secrets and destroying the bondage of secrets. And so let me tell the audience. I know that there was years that had went by before you had decided to say anything about this particular subject. And so let's dive into there because I've read your chapter and it's wonderful. And so let's talk about how many years did it take you before you decided to share your secret? And then what was your why for doing it?
So it took me 41 years. I would say it was 41 years that I actually said it to the public, put it in black and white. Can't take it back because it's already out there. Can't erase it. It's just out there, bam. I more or less shared it in a sense with other people. I actually shared it during one of my trainings, which actually was a breakthrough, not just for myself, but it was also a breakthrough for another individual who was dealing with a situation. And when I shared my story and they looked at me and they're like, oh my goodness, like when I look at you, I see you as a strong person. Like you don't let anybody like push you around, bully you or anything. And to know that you went through this and you held on to this, like, oh my goodness. um, One of the reasons why just to break it was because when God was showing me he was moving me forward into a new season, and that as long as you continue to do advocacy work and you support other people and you want people to own their truth and be able to stand up and not see themselves as what happened to them, but know that there's more that's on the inside of them, that's when it was like, okay, I need you to share your story. But before you share your story, I need to take you through this process of sharing your story, but I need you to go through this process of being healed. And yeah, let's just say God has a strange way of taking you through the process he wants you to go through.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And so, the thing about the Lord that I've grown to love is the fact that He will use those experiences to really be the stepping stone or a catalyst for us to be able to talk to people about those same issues that we have gone through, have been delivered from, and been healed from as well. And so, this is such a major, major topic about being an advocate for those who have gone through, molestation and any type of violation of our own will when it comes to sexuality. And so for you, you took so long for some people would say, okay, you took so long to share your story. And then once you shared it, what was the response from people that did not know that this happened to you?
Well, some people are still surprised. Like again, the people who know me, or the people who thought they knew me and stuff. And it's just like, oh my goodness, like I would have never thought that. But I shared in my book, It Didn't Break Me, like how this thing it was carried with me throughout my lifetime and stuff. And I was actually sharing with my coach. I said, do you know, I didn't even get a chance to enjoy my graduation because this
Mm,
person was at my graduation. And when I think about that and just going through this, there was a trauma that was also attached to it.
yeah.
And in this process of just even after writing the book, because as I told you, write the chapter, as I told you, God was like, that's the name of your business. And so even in the midst of that, being in this coaching program and just becoming a trauma informed coach, it's just like, wow, this trauma was there, but it masked itself. It would be a
Mm,
trigger, and then it would come back, and then it would be a trigger, and then it would just be like, okay, now we're running to this cave. And
mhm.
God was like, no, I need you to like not be in this place, because there's more on the inside of you. And even when I do tell people that haven't even read the book my story, it's like, oh my goodness, like how can you forgive this person? Because I was
Mm,
actually in training last week, and we were talking about things about trauma and different stuff. And I was telling them, I said, for me, the forgiveness wasn't for that person. It was for me. And I
yeah.
chose to forgive because that's who I am. And I think when a person heard me, they thought I said I chose to forgive because I grew up in the church. And I'm like,
Mm,
no, church has nothing to do with forgiveness. It's my relationship with Christ, and Christ forgave me. But it's the simple fact is, how can you show somebody what forgiveness looks like? Because forgiveness for people is totally different. How you may
yeah.
look at forgiveness and how your audience might look at forgiveness, we view forgiveness in two totally different ways. And for me, God was like, I need you to give this person a card. And I'm like, you want me to go
Mm,
spend some money on a card? But God kept reminding me, it's not about you. Because when you're truly healed, it
mhm.
won't become an issue. And when God was taking me through this process, it was one of those things to where, okay, I can do this. But for me, the hardest piece I will say it was the hardest piece was like letting my biological mother know, because I'm adopted,
Okay.
as you, because I grew up in foster care. And so when I shared this with her, it was like I told her, I don't want you to be mad at this person or anything like that, but I'm telling you my truth. And when I shared that with her, it was like weight had came off, and then
Mhm.
I was able to write my chapter.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So, tell us, what do you think? And maybe you, as an advocate, maybe you have, encountered, some people who have, confided in you. Why it's so difficult for some to share openly,
Mhm.
and then how do they even, deal with it? One thing you said was you masked it. You covered it up. So, what would be, maybe a couple of reasons why people don't come forward when it happens and then they wait so long before they do?
Well, one, I noticed it's shame,
Okay.
and it could be who the individual person is. Like, nah, this person would have did this to you. Nah, not this person. But at the end of the day, you people are not realizing that you see two total different sides of this individual
Oh,
person.
that's good.
And
That's really good.
and it's like, okay, so it's like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde,
Mhm.
or the Joker, or Mr. Two-Face, better yet. Because one moment they show you one side of them, but when they're around you, they show you them. Kind of like, well, Maya Angelou, when somebody shows you themselves, they're
Yeah.
showing you themselves. And so, and it's one of those things to where, like, if I share, are people going to think that I'm weak? Or how are people going to perceive me? I mean, am
Yeah.
I going to be invited to the cookout? Does this mean I don't get any more invitations?
Mhm.
And for some people, sharing that may open up more secrets, and it may open up more things
Mhm.
that other people didn't know what was going on, or you just being that catalyst to say, hey, it happened to me, and now that I'm here explaining and expressing and stuff, now you can do it. But I would number one, I would actually say it's shame, and then
Mhm.
it could be who the individual person was.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you for that. And then, as you are coaching someone through this process, tell us, because I'm sure that those who are going to be viewing this episode right here, um, they may know somebody, and it may even be them that that's dealing with this issue as well. And so, as you're coaching somebody through this process toward healing, what's one of the principles that you share with them in order for them to get through this?
Recognizing that you matter. That's the first
Mhm.
thing. Recognizing that at the end of the day, you matter, regardless of what other people may think, regardless of how other people may view you. You know that your value is in the Lord. And the one thing that helped me was Jeremiah 31:3, because whenever I was battling, I was just battling with depression, just going
Mhm.
through, because I was having triggers. Not realizing there was triggers, I'm just thinking like, oh my God, my brain is like all over the place. But when I heard, it was with loving kindness have I drawn thee,
Mhm.
because I'm like blaming the Lord for all of these different things. And he was reminding me, no, I've been there with you. So number one, I would definitely say you got to know that you value who you are as a person has more value than somebody else's opinion. I'm sorry. Sometimes people, and I could speak this because this was me, because it was more or less, I'm more concerned about other people than
Right.
versus being concerned about my own self. And it's so funny that you asked me that question. One of the exercises that my coach had us do was to mind map. And
Mhm.
I actually went through and I mapped out the areas of my trauma. Like I mapped out the areas of my trigger, and I'm sitting there looking at this, and I color coded it. Like each event had a color, each event had an emoji. And when it overwhelmed me, I put it down. And that reminded me that even in this process of coaching somebody or helping somebody, you got to be able to let them know that this process is going to be hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be a struggle. You probably want to pick up the phone and like go off on that person, but
Mhm.
more than anything, just know that it is a process. It is,
Yeah.
it is not a sprint. It's not even a marathon. I'm not even fixing to say that.
Yeah.
It is a process. And the reason why I say it's a process is because you got to realize that before you can get to the next step, you got to deal with the first step.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. So you talked about triggers, and that's so important because I'm going through a coaching program as well to help people through emotional trauma because that's my background as well.
Mhm.
And you're talking about triggers, and sometimes we don't recognize those triggers, and sometimes we might just kind of brush them off. But give us a few triggers so that people can know that if they're dealing with this may be one of the triggers that brings them back to that moment, that those episodes, and how do they even go about getting through that?
So, one of the things for me was that person's name,
That's
the,
good.
the name of that person,
Yeah.
and it's like, but that person's name isn't spelled like this person's name. And literally, I had a coworker whose last name was my family member's first name. And I'm like looking at this, like, okay, this is not that person. This is not that person. Okay, we're fixing it. We're doing this. I like literally talking myself through this, that I'm
Mm,
not attaching this person to what happened to me, because this person has nothing to do what happened to me. I am here to be this person's leader. And I had to step out of myself as being that 5-year-old and realizing that, okay, this event happened to me, but this is not me. I can say whenever I was in the military, I was sexually harassed, and it was something about this person's presence that aggravated me. And I literally had to like walk away from this person, and even the smell of a cologne. And it's
mm,
just one of those, taking a deep breath and breathing in the air of God. But for me to get to this point, I had to really understand that I had to let God heal me. I had to let
yeah.
him walk me through this process. And it's funny you said that too, because before I retired, I saw this person's last name.
Mm,
And my coworker, he looked at me because I just said, "Oh my God." And my coworker was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, "Nothing." And I went on about my business. And I literally had to issue out paperwork. And all I did was pray. I said, "Lord, when I walk back here, don't let me see a last name. Don't let me see a face. Don't let me see any of that." And literally, I probably saw this person's last name, but I didn't see that person's last name.
yeah.
And it's just one of those things, is just being able to recognize it and process yourself, so that you don't allow yourself to go back to that event. And I say that to say is, remember that you're here today, you're not in the past.
Yeah, yeah, that's very good, very good. So what advice would you give someone who is going through it right now and they don't feel that they have that they are able to even, make that bold statement? What advice would you give them so that they can know that, they're safe, they really are safe once they share that?
Okay, so I'm pretty sure, not sure if all of your viewers are believers, and regardless if you are a believer or not, I'm just going to tell you what I had to go through.
Mhm.
Um, and I know God wants to help. He wants to help everybody.
Correct.
I had to pray. I literally like had to pray, and it was so crazy. I had to get up and walk. I just
Mhm.
literally had to get up and just walk and just be in this space with God, to allow him to minister to me, to remind me. Because like I had shared with you, that when I was writing this chapter, I was just like, and God kept saying, "You're stronger than you think. You're stronger than
Yeah,
you think. You're stronger than you think." And it was, I had to hear his voice outside of the outside.
yeah,
I
yeah,
had to make his voice be the sounding board versus what the world was out there saying. And when God was just like, at the end of the day, I have you. You can walk through this process. And the biggest thing I would say too is, ask God, who do you go to and share this with?
mhm,
Because for me, when I brought this to another individual who was in my family, and they shared with me their story, it was like me listening to them
mhm.
almost made me not step out.
Okay, okay.
And that was the biggest thing, was God was just reminding me, when I send you to the right person, they'll
Mhm.
give you what you need. But first, I need you to let me love you hug on you and walk you through this process, because I promise you, if I would have listened to that person, me and you wouldn't be having this interview. I would still be getting ready to turn 46 in August and be like, okay.
Wow. Okay. All right. So you said something about, you've been your advocate and now you have a business. Let's talk a little bit about how your business unfolded and then how you serve the community as a whole.
Okay, so it unfolded when I was sitting upstairs and I was writing my chapter in 2 hours. And I'm just like, okay, because I was getting ready to do something else. And God was like, no, this is your business. This right here is this right here is your business. And what was so crazy, I didn't even realize that I had trauma.
That's really good. That's really good because it took me a moment to realize that I was living in trauma. So I can so identify with you on that. Go ahead.
And so I'm like, okay. I mean, and I've seen other people's trauma. I've experienced things, just being on deployments and different things. But for me, I didn't realize that depression and all of these different things,
Yeah.
they were masked. My trauma, that's where my trauma, it was there. Okay, this event had me in this bubble that caused the trauma, that caused isolation, that caused hopelessness, and not realizing that all of these things were coming together like how can I say this? And I'm just saying this for me. So please people, this is just me. It was almost like a salad bowl. It was just like, you have the bowl, the trauma is the bowl, and depression it was like your lettuce and different things, the tomatoes and all of this other kind of stuff. And for me, I can't stand anything that has a white sauce. I'm sorry. It just reminds me of mayonnaise. And for me, it's just one of those things to where the dressing on top of it that I did not like is what was keeping me covered.
Okay.
So having all of that together. So when God was showing me, okay, you've been dealing with trauma this entire time, and I've been having my hand on you. I've graced you, and even with triggers. And then that's when God was like, now I need you to walk this thing out on how I was showing you that you were living out your trauma. But at the same time, my hand was still on you. And I didn't allow you not to do the things that you wanted to do, because had he not, then I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today.
Yeah. So identify with a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, especially the piece about coming to the realization that you were living in some trauma. And so when you are coaching somebody through this process, your business that you offer. So somebody is looking at this and they say, you know what, I really want some help in this area. What would be the first step a person would take in order for them to even begin this process of healing?
To realize there's an issue. And when I say that, to realize that there is really something that is there. To be honest with yourself and not look at somebody else's story or not look at what you see on TV, but owning your own truth. Just being able to stand and say, okay, this happened to me. Because trauma is not just about, being violated, being divorced or anything. Everybody experienced different traumas. But for me, like being in foster care and having to go back and forth, that was a trauma. When you're taken away from your home and everything, now you're being adopted. And so trauma, it's in many different ways, but being able to finally say, okay, I realize that there is something that I'm constantly going through this cycle. I'm constantly going through cycles. That's the first thing I identified, was that there was a cycle that was there. And when I identified the cycle, then I'm able to sit down and write down and figure out, okay, where was this cycle? Because I had trauma. I had a trauma issue when I was 5. But when I was in 7th grade, I had a trauma issue because I was bullied. So just different things that going back. And that's one reason why I said with the mind mapping really helped me to say, okay, this event started all of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really, really good. Wow. You know what? This is such a great conversation. It's a great topic because there's so many people who are dealing with, these issues that they really have to, as you mentioned, acknowledge, and want to. And I'm sure everybody at some point wants to be healed from it. It's just for some of us, it's the process of how we go about healing. And so I want you to share with us, how can someone connect with you so that those who are viewing and they're saying, yeah, I need some assistance, and Jennifer is the one that I want to talk to. Tell us how somebody can connect with you so that they can go through this process of getting healed and whole from the issues that they've been dealing with.
Okay, so you can send me a message on IG under the Jennifer M. Jackson. That's my IG. Send me a direct message, or you can go to my website, www.nomoresecrets.me. And that name is specific because you're saying it to yourself, nomoresecrets.me. You're telling yourself that, hey, this is done. This is a wrap. And even if somebody just wants somebody to pray with them or just to talk with them, you can reach out to me and stuff, because I just believe that we're in this place and we're in this season that the Lord is tired of his sons and his daughters going through these cycles, because there's greatness on the inside of people. And when the enemy can make you feel like your trauma is a mountain, you won't be able to see what faith look like.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I want to thank you for joining us here on Now Faith Is TV. And those of you who are viewing this, thank you so much for tuning in today. And we are definitely going to see you on another episode of Now Faith Is TV.